Ship. Miserable existence. Shut up, demon! Fool, Malus. Without me, we both die here. Imprisoned within your flesh is a power that mortals would kill for. Hate is our gift to one another. Malus. All things are possible. You have your pain, Malus. But your soul belongs to me.
Christmas comes early this year, boys, and we've been very naughty. Festag DLC is on the way, and it comes shrouded in darkness. The Shadow and the Blade is dropping on December 12th as Deathmaster Snikch, Chief Ninja Rat of Clan Ashen, and Malus Darkblade, the Bad Elf McBlacksword himself, join the Warhammer 2 cast for the first time. And the last time, I guess, if you want to put it that way, which means Dark Elves and Skaven are on the docket once more, paving the way for that High Elves vs Greenskins Lord pack many expect to see sometime early next year. But this is a matchup I don't think anybody was really expecting to see. I venture to guess like 80% of the community was probably on the Beast Lord hype train with Rakarth and Throt the Unclean duking it out over Hellpit. But no, it's Clan Ashen and Hag Grafe as the new sub-factions in a battle for Zarkan, Drinker of Worlds, and all the power a demon of his stature could possibly afford. So, I guess the question is, who are these new legendary lords? What is their role in the Warhammer Fantasy Battle universe, and how might they play on the battlefields and campaign map of Total War Warhammer 2? Well, let's start with Malus Darkblade, who is well and truly one of the most iconic characters in the setting. Hands down, right up there in the top 10 with Gotrek and Felix, Thankwall, and the other big names of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. He has his own omnibus of Black Library novels, notable for the frequency in which he and his immediate kin try to murder each other in increasingly violent ways, and he is a true Cinderella story, complete with orgies, flaying, incest, and a non-stop rampage of violence across the dark corners of the known world. You know, just your typical coming-of-age story. His rise to become Tyrant of Hag Grafe was legendary, one that quickly drew the attention and ire of the Witch King himself, and he's possessed by an ancient Slaaneshi demon named Zarkan, the Drinker of Worlds, who has slowly corrupted him over the decades, infusing Malus with unholy strength, speed, and regeneration when called upon in deadly struggles, which happen every other day when Malus Darkblade is living his Dark Elf life. But each time he calls upon that demon, the demon extends his roots further and further throughout his host's body. So, with Malus Darkblade, we've got a classic case of demonic possession to deal with here, one that will make a huge impact on how he plays, both in campaign and on the battlefield itself. Through hate, all things are possible, and through it all, always sneaking, always stabbing his way through the shadows, will be Deathmaster Snikch. Surprised to be sure, but a welcome one. Not my first choice, but let me just say right off the bat, this pretty much guarantees that Grayseer Thankwall is getting some crazy cool content later down the line. Might not even be for Warhammer 2, but they're holding on to Thankwall for a very good reason at this point. So, getting other characters just means more Skaven loving overall. And honestly, it's pretty hard to go wrong with Ninja Rats. Now, in the source material, Snikch was specifically forbidden from leading armies. I believe the special rule was called a killer, not a leader, and that prevented him from becoming your army's general. But as the de facto ruler of Clan Ashen, answerable only to Night Lord Sneak, he fills the same role as Skrulk, or Queek, or Ikit Claw, the right paw of their respective clans, and the legendary Lord representative for each of those, which I guess leaves Clan Molder and Throughout the Unclean as the only major Skaven clan of the Big Four still not in the game. Might be a hint that he comes later down the line, I'm not sure. And the Deathmaster himself is responsible for the murders of some of the most important lords in the setting. And yes, in a less than beloved move by Games Workshop, he assassinated none other than High King Thorgrim Grudgebearer himself. Yeah, and essentially, he's the rat you want cutting the proverbial head off the snake on the eve of battle. If you want to sow confusion and discord in enemy ranks and eliminate their highest value, most well-protected officials, it looks like Deathmaster Snikch is probably the rat you want to send in. So the Shadow and the Blade is coming. Skaven vs. Dark Elves, which means new sub-factions, new campaign mechanics, new generic lords, new Regiments of Renown, and new units on both sides of the conflict. And it sounds like the entire campaign arc is going to revolve around this demon host, this drinker of worlds, Zarkan. And both Snikch and Malus Darkblade will be trying to bend this entity to their will, which will be a much more personal conflict than the one we saw with the Hunter and the Beast, which was kind of a continent-spanning conflict between the Empire and the Lizardmen. And I think that's fitting that this will be a bit more personal, because one of the things that made Malus and his story arc so interesting is that it wasn't about this continent-spanning war or showing off the Warhammer world on a macro scale. It was just one Dark Elf edgelord on his own personal adventures, his own musings, his own struggle with demonic possession, and his conquest over that adversity. It had more of a Gotrek and Felix kind of vibe and scale to it, and kind of felt more personal than some of those broader stories with a lot more characters, something like The Sundering. And his playthrough will be marked by a constant struggle between the benefits of possession and the downsides to letting that poison run rampant. Malus can drink an elixir to stem the corruption, or unleash the beast during battle and get a whole new set of stats and abilities. But on the campaign map, your Dark Elf allies will begin to trust you less and less as the influence of Zarkan grows within you. So balancing that conflict for your very soul will play a central role in how things play out during the course of your campaign. And in some ways, probably going to be pretty similar to Tyrion and his Blood of Venarion versus Defender of Ulthuan chains. But in this case, instead of a skill tree where you decide to go down one or the other, Zarkan's possession will be the driving force behind everything. Your combat stats, your abilities, your campaign effects, and the story arc itself. And where it gets even more interesting is that you'll have a choice in how your campaign starts as well. You start in control of Hag Grave, but an early dilemma gives you the chance to sell it off for a boatload of cash, or hold on to it and deal with the political and military pressure from other Dark Elf factions while you're far away from home. And that will be a real dilemma, because Hag Grave is one of the strongest settlements in the game. I think it's when it's fully kitted out, there's a settlement chain building in there for a mine that gives you like 800 or 1200 a turn, which is absolutely obscene. So you kind of want to hold on to it if you can, but at the same time, if you uproot and go somewhere else, maybe that will be worth it if you get paid a boatload of cash to do so. Now in battle, Malus is a heavily armored close quarters combatant who excels at dealing AP damage thanks to his powerful Warp Sword of Cain, a weapon that has an entire novel devoted to it. He rides a unique cold one named Spite, a creature that is quite a bit smaller than his kin, but is much less stupid and a hell of a lot luckier. And in the lore, Malus and other Cold One Knights actually use the slime from their Noglir, their mounts, and the slime that they exude, and they paint themselves with it. It dulls their senses of touch over time, but it makes it so the raptors can't actually eat them because they smell them and say, oh, you're one of us, you're one of our kin. Now for lords and units, we're getting High Beastmasters as a generic lord choice. So say goodnight, sweet prince, to Rakarth. I just don't think we'll be seeing him anytime soon. But Beastmasters are the monster manipulators from Clark Rond and Karon Kar, whose job it is to control the Charybdis, the Hydras, the Manticores, and the other abominations of Nagaroth, and force them in the direction of the enemy. So expect to see them with a bonus for Slorge and steroid buffs for monsters in the way that a Necrotech kind of buffs constructs. So single target buffs and passive effects in an AoE that increase their speed and increase their killing power. And in addition, we're getting a Master as a hero, kind of the High Elf Noble equivalent from the tabletop, a Scourge Runner Chariot with a Ravager Harpoon, which can maim and even pull enemy monsters towards the chariot itself. So a bonus for Slorge range attack would probably come standard there, and it's good for sniping single entities. I think that would make a lot of sense on a Scourge Runner. And Death by Snoo Snoo is on its way as well. The main attraction of the DLC for a lot of people, I think, Medusa are going to be a playable unit. The Coven of Gron Sorceress, cursed by authority to an eternity of torment in a bestial form, now wielded by Morathi as a shock force on the battlefield. And they're actually kind of hot. Look at them. I'd wipe that up in a second. Just don't gaze into their eyes or listen to their shrieks, because your blood will come pouring out of every orifice in your body. And I've heard that's, well, it's a pretty painful way to go. And finally, we are getting the Bloodwrack Shrine, a Medusa mounted on essentially a war altar of Cain, with a dark mirror used to echo her gaze and shrieks throughout the battlefield. And on the tabletop, Medusa's gaze were kind of represented by shooting attacks that were similar to magic missiles. So expect to see them have some kind of ranged effect that makes them a hybrid monster. 3 new Regiments of Renown for the Dark Elves: the Siren of Red Ruin Bloodwrack Medusa with an AoE damaging scream, the Ravagers of Rakarth Scourge Runner Chariot with a net and missile resist debuff for enemy monsters, and the Crows of Cain Harpies with regeneration in melee. And for the Skaven and Deathmaster Snikch, Assassination, Subterfuge, and Espionage are the calling cards of Clan Eshin, a ninja clan who learned their art over millennia in Nippon and Cathay. And Eshin characters can perform shadowy dealing actions against their rivals on the campaign map, with 100% success chance and without the need to actually move your agents. They can perform them from wherever they stand, and can steal money that way, they can take items from other factions that way, they can incite rebellions, assassinate characters, and burn down cities, like the Great Fire of Lothern, long rumored to be one of the Deathmaster's greatest triumphs. Clan Eshin is also the most widely sought after for their services of the 4 great Skaven clans, because of the Skaven penchant for backstabbing. So your standing with the other great clans will play a huge role in the new contract system as well, where you can receive food, money, and increased reputation by completing certain missions. So it sounds like a system where if Clan Molder wants me to assassinate a Scryer General, and I do so successfully, I'll get the immediate benefits of money or food or whatever, but also a global benefit to my standing with Clan Molder, which in turn makes my Rat Ogres and my Abominations stronger and lowers their upkeep and recruitment cost. I really like the sound of that system. I think that sounds really cool. Should give players a ton of options in who they want to serve and how they manipulate the other great clans against each other. And if you want to go for Molder-themed armies, you can help out Molder. If you want to go for more tech-themed armies, help out Scryer, and that gives you a lot of chance to roleplay and basically play how you want to play, which is the entire fun of Total War campaigns. The sandbox element is what makes it so great. And it seems like Creative Assembly is basing this entire subfaction, the Clan Eshin subfaction, off their Storm of Chaos supplement, which I believe was where the Lore of Stealth and Eshin sorcery in general was first introduced with actual rules. So we will be getting an Eshin sorcerer and that new Lore of Magic focused on shadows and deception. In the source material, the Lore of Stealth has Skitter Leap, which makes stuff invisible in Total War and is nowhere near as cool as the teleporting it did on the tabletop and in the books. Armor of Darkness for giving single entity death squads of assassins more survivability. Warp Star Shurikens. Black Whirlwind Vortex that kind of just destroys stuff wherever it lands. Sticky Paws for Swift Stride, and Swift Scamper for doubling a unit speed. We'll see how many of those get translated and how much they get changed from the tabletop to here, but sounds like that will be the essential basis for that Lore of Magic. And for Snikch himself, he is a armor-sundering duelist with Weeping Daggers, which means enemy armor is automatically cut in half on contact, so it doesn't matter if you're a steam tank or what, 50%, your armor is just cloven in two. You got Vanguard and Stalk on him, as you would expect. He is an assassin, going to be moving the same way that the Death Runners do, probably has concealment bombs, and fights in a whirling storm of blades, with one in each hand and a third in his tail. All sounds pretty dope on paper, basically an assassin on steroids, which is what he is, but I have my doubts about how effective he will actually be in battle. I mean, he's a Footlord with presumably not very much HP or mass, so getting on target is going to be kind of hard. Sneaking up to enemies, probably not going to be the easiest thing in the world either. Staying on target is going to be hard, not getting knocked down is going to be hard, and then not getting crunked on by the Colex or the Mammoths or the Mazda Mundis and Arcans of the world, also going to be pretty challenging for a tiny little ninja rat. So, I don't know. I think he might have a rough time in multiplayer, but also maybe not going to be exactly a world beater in campaign battles either. There are a lot of lords in Warhammer that can wade into melee and blow stuff up with their spells. Not going to be so much of that with a kind of squishy assassin lord, but maybe if he's exquisite at murdering single entities, then he'll be worth it. I don't know yet. Remains to be seen for sure, but I can see him having some issues. Gonna be hard to beat out someone like Skrolk, for example, who can just press a button and automatically deal 1,000,000 damage to a single entity with Liber and then summon a bunch of rats everywhere, tie up units, and nuke everything into oblivion. In terms of units, we are getting a Master Assassin, a light version of Snikch himself, the Eshin Sorcerer with Lore of Stealth, Eshin Triads, which sound like the Eshin Yakuza, a melee unit with halberds that gives some kind of frontline support to gutter runners and night runners, Poison Wind Mortars, which should provide a long-range alternative for blasting blobs of infantry into oblivion, and Warp-Grinder weapon teams, which should be very useful in siege battles, as they can either dig underground or through stone walls and open up avenues of attack for the menace below. So I'm very curious to see how they function on regular battlefields, but they sound pretty cool too. And to top it all off, 3 new Regiments of Renown. Same for the Dark Elves, we have 3 new ones for the Skaven. The Avalanche Deathglow Mortar, higher DPS and armor-piercing alternative to the Poison Wind Mortars, Vistrin's Death Squad Death Runners with a dodge chance and bonus for infantry, and Ishka's Triads, who can summon a clone of themselves to block charges and misdirect enemies. So, a pretty cool lineup there, all things considered. I mean, I have my doubts about how effective an entire army of Clan Eshin will be in multiplayer. In campaign, presumably, the Deathmaster will have plenty of things to buff them up and make them a lot more viable in a concerted army whole. But in multiplayer, a lot of those units are very squishy, very reliant on their speed. When they get thrown in, for example, Death Runners, they can't go toe-to-toe with really like any infantry unit in the game. You don't want to. You want to charge them from behind, sunder their armor, and then escape back into the trees. And you can't really do that so well when that's like your front line. So I think Skaven will have to still rely on other units to be their front line, their meat shields. But thankfully, they got Clan Rats, they got Slave Rats. So maybe Clan Eshin armies will be made viable with all these new additions. Pretty short turnaround time between this DLC and the last one, and in some ways, you can feel it with what you're seeing here. I don't think it's nearly as hype as something like the Prophet and the Warlock, for instance. It looks like a cool DLC, but we are beginning to scrape the bottom of the barrel in terms of missing units and Regiments of Renown. So that isn't to say that these additions aren't useful or fun, but maybe not quite as cool as some of the stuff we've had in the past. Not true for everybody, but I think a lot of us are wanting those huge, big, headlining units, like the Vermin Lords, the Storm Fiends, that kind of stuff. But every DLC that goes by with no thankwall makes me think more and more of that stuff is coming in Warhammer 3. There's a reason it hasn't dropped yet. Could be that it never comes at all, but when you see that thankwall is inextricably linked to both those two things, and none of them have shown up yet, it makes you think, okay, maybe that is going to be a thing later down the line. There's nothing I'm truly disappointed about with this Lord Pack in and of itself. It's exactly the kind of content we should expect to see every 3 to 5 months from now until the release of Game 3. Medusa are a great addition. They look gorgeous. Clan Eshin is a great addition. Malus Darkblade is an elf amongst elves, and without a doubt, before going into Warhammer 2, one of my most anticipated characters. And it looks like the mechanics they're doing here are going to do him justice for sure. I'm excited for all of it, and for the price. 20 or 30 hours of content worth easily there seems worth it to me for what we're getting in this pack. But yeah, the race reveals and initial Lord packs are always going to be more hype, I feel, than one like this, which is kind of, again, beginning to get near the bottom of the barrel in terms of what we're adding to the game, simply because when those first DLCs come out, there's more content and more surprise to draw from there. So when the Demons of Chaos first come out, there's going to be so much hype because it's an entirely new roster. And all these Lord packs, their first ones, are always going to be amazing because they're adding a bunch of new cool units that we didn't see on launch. Still happening here, but just on a smaller scale, and I think that's going to be true leading up into Warhammer 3. So this is what we should expect going forward for the next, I don't know, 9, 10, 12 months or so. As opposed to DLC that's like the second or third release for a faction, it's just going to be less hype because more stuff has already come out for them before. So let me know in the comment section below. Is the Shadow and the Blade a surprise for you guys? Are you guys excited to see what's going on here? What parts of the DLC sound intriguing to you? And is this a matchup you're happy with? Would you have preferred to have seen something like Rakarth the Beastmaster versus Throt the Unclean, Clan Mulder and Clark Huron, that kind of thing? Would you have preferred that? Or are you very happy with what you're seeing in the trailer and what we've seen from the Steam page and all that content so far? Let me know. Hope you guys enjoyed. I will be covering this DLC a ton over the next several weeks. There's going to be so much content coming out for it. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Be sure to check in often because there will be a lot of good stuff on the way. So I'll see you guys next time. Indie Pride, signing out for now. Have a good one, guys.